All right, we are live. We'll give this a little while to see if it will work. Hopefully, it will. I'm on about 10 minutes early to see if this thing is actually going to work or not. Like I said, hopefully, it will work just fine. If you hear some crying in the background, we have got a newborn baby here at the house. Praise the Lord. And so you may hear some crying. If you hear some wild craziness, that would be our older daughter running around like crazy. Uh, um, so please forgive me for any of that you may hear. But I won't ask too much forgiveness because them little ones are blessings from the Lord, and they will be little ones. So it's okay. We'll try to give this some time. If you end up not watching this live, like most people that watch this won't see it live, you can fast forward probably somewhere around 10 minutes before we get into what we're going to talk about tonight. We will see, hopefully, how things go. Hopefully, this thing will keep working. Hopefully, YouTube won't throw me off in the middle of this that I'm going to try to talk about. This is going to be similar to we did a sermon at the church not too long ago talking about ID 2020 and not right. We said, listen, I'm not saying this is the mark of the beast, but can you at least see the roadmap? Can you see how somebody would accept this thing? And that was over a great deal of study. And I had to preach that sermon to protect our flock that the Lord has given us. A place to preach and to tell the truth to those people, and I had to do that, and it was something very uncomfortable. It's not something that I typically do, and I feel as though we need to talk about COVID-19 some a little tonight for the same reason, to try to shed some truth, hopefully, or at least the thought that there may be some different opinions that probably should be looked at. Maybe we need to try to go over some of them. So I know that YouTube and some of the other social media platforms have said that they will throw anybody off that is not in direct agreement, if you will, with the WHO and organizations like and such. And what I'm going to be asking tonight for you guys that are watching this is I'm going to give you the narrative, the more widely accepted view, and an alternative theory, and I'm going to let you guys decide. Imagine that, right? Freedom to choose what you want to believe or what you may believe. There will not be freedom to get outside the truth. The truth is the truth, whether you like the truth or not. But you will have the choice to believe whether or not you're being told the whole truth or just partial truths, or whether some things maybe in the official narrative sounds right, and maybe there's some things that doesn't. I'm going to do my best to be as honest as I can be. And like I said, I may get thrown off of here in a little bit. That may stop. That seems to be what happens whenever I try to talk about anything controversial. Is YouTube seems to stop my live streams midstream. I found out not too long ago that they classified a bunch of the end time teaching as mature content, and you had to turn off your filters in order to watch those teaching videos about Jesus coming back. For mature audiences only, I guess. So we'll give this some time here. I'm sure all this bad mouthing YouTube's not helping my case any, but we will give this some time to come up. This is why online platforms is not a good fix for the situation we're in during this pandemic. Online platforms can be censored, twisted, manipulated by people that have no idea what the person is trying to say. or have every idea and just don't like it, however you want to look at it. And so we need to be careful how much we depend on these online platforms. I do these in order to try to spread the truth, to spread the gospel as much as possible to as many people as possible. I believe that in my life I have basically one purpose, and that is to serve God, right? With everything that I have, every ounce that I have, and until they throw me off completely, we will just continue pressing forward, right? Continue serving God, doing the best that we can to serve God. I try to serve the Lord as the best I can, try to set an example for my family and for our church. I try very hard. I mess up. I make mistakes. I have to apologize. These are all part of it, but we try, right? We'll give this some time to continue here and let some folks get some more time to get on here. Anybody that would want to get on here, we'll give them a little bit. Once again, if you're not watching this live, you can probably fast forward 10 minutes anyway, or 5. I've already been on 6 minutes just venting, so you can fast forward through that 6 minutes. Keep on pushing forward. Well, like I said, maybe to the 10-minute mark or so, and then we'll begin to try to lay some of this out tonight. And I understand that not everyone's going to like this. I get it. But I believe that staying silent is going to cause more damage than speaking out. And so let's speak out. Let's at least talk about the idea that there may be some other theories. Hey, Bob. Hey, Mom. Hope you're doing all right tonight. Hope you don't disown me too bad after this. I'm just kidding. Mom's not going to disown me. If she was going to, she'd done it a long time ago. We'll get on here and get going. If you have any questions or comments, anything you'd like to say, feel free to put it in the comment section. I'll try to address it. Considering that I believe there's a whole 2 viewers right now. One of them is my mom, and the other one is probably my wife. I don't know that. I can't see who they are. The only reason why I know Mom's watching is because she commented there. So if you have anything you want to say, feel free to put it on there. I'll try to catch up to it, and we'll try to talk about it. If I miss some points, so I know that some people that may be watching this are probably way more intelligent about this than I am. So if I miss something, feel free to comment and let me know. And we will try to address it as we get going here. We'll give this another couple minutes here. So I've got one computer that says 6:59, another one says 7 on the button, and the other one, my watch, I've got about 2 minutes till. So we'll give it another couple of minutes because I told everybody to fast forward to about the 10-minute mark, and that's where we will start in on our teaching, our talking, our reality check, if you will, and we'll see what happens here. This should be exciting. I don't know of anything more pressing right now to the church, to the body of Christ, is to be honest about these things. And so that's what we are going to do. Give this a few minutes here to come up. I'm impressed. This is the first time I've done one of these live videos in a while, and it's running pretty smooth right now. We'll take it. We have went back to outdoor services at our church. For the time being, we had our own reasons for doing that I won't share, but we did that, and so I need to try to do some online teachings. I didn't, so we've been outside for the last couple of weeks, but I'm just going to be honest. The first Wednesday, we had a brand new baby, and my stepdad passed away, and so I took that Wednesday and last Wednesday both off. And so today we are right back in the saddle again, if you will, to try to talk about some of this stuff. I don't know. I don't have a teaching in line for next week already. We will just pray and ask the Lord to guide us and direct us in our teaching. Give this almost to the 10-minute mark, and we'll get started here. I know I hate having 10 minutes of dead time, if you will, but we'll get it up here. 59, 10 minutes on the button. All right. So we will begin to talk about this now tonight. So why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about COVID-19 on a channel that I do typically a very straightforward Bible teaching, and I do also, we do our homestead videos on. Why are we talking about COVID-19? Because COVID-19 right now is very pressing on the church. COVID-19 has caused lots of division in the church. And I say COVID-19, right? So that is the virus, but really what's caused it is our own struggles with inside ourselves, our own maybe ignorance, our own frustrations, our own shortcomings, our own lack of patience, all of these things, the things that have came with it, the collateral damage, right? People being laid off from work, people fearful, people scared, people not knowing what the truth is about COVID-19, not knowing what to believe, the uncertainty. That has caused a lot of division in our churches, and it has caused people to not go to church, not care about going to church. It has caused people to be fearful of going to church. Some people, I'm not going to lie, like I understand, right? Some pre-existing health conditions, right? And you say, listen, I don't want to be in a public setting right now because I have these health conditions that may be dangerous if I were to contract COVID-19. And I understand that. I just ask you to be consistent, right? If you are too scared to go to church, you should be too scared to go to the grocery store. You should be too scared to go to the fair. You should be too scared to do lots and lots and lots and lots of things, right? And you may think, well, that's really harsh. Well, it's not intended to be harsh. It's intended for you to make sure that you are treating the Lord with the utmost respect, right? Now, a building does not make the church, and we know that, but the congregation does, right? Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, even more so as you see the day approaching, right? So we just need to be honest and open about these things, right? Listen, we have all been there. I'm not going to lie, right? There are times whenever I'm like, man, it would be a whole lot more comfortable, right? Not to go. My wife was on bed rest, pregnant, and on bed rest through most of this pandemic, and I was a nervous wreck, right? Because I know the harsh reality, and I know what it is to lose a child in the womb. We know that pain in this household. And so this was not something that we take lightly, right? This isn't something we take for a grain of salt. We wanted to be sure what this is and what the possible repercussions were. If we stayed active in serving the Lord, then what are our possible repercussions, right? What could happen to my wife? What could happen to our unborn child at the time? And now we got a newborn, right? And the last thing you want is for them to get some sort of really bad respiratory illness, right? That's the last thing that you want. And high fevers, right? And we've got another young child, and we don't want that for them. And there's history in our family of all sorts of health issues, right? That may be passed down to us, that may be affected. And I have grandparents that are not in the best of health, right? And we had my stepdad who was on hospice. He's passed away now, not from COVID-19. Let me clarify. He had all kinds of other health issues, and he's passed away now. But we were over there a lot, right? And we didn't want to pass these things on to him. And like I said, grandparents that we love very dearly, and we don't want to pass these things on to them. And so we wanted to be honest about it, right? And understand that. But we also want to know what we're dealing with and whether or not we're being consistent, right? So it seems as if, and once again, this is just blunt honesty. You don't have to like it, and I understand that, and it's okay. But are we making these same excuses for other things, right? So we make them for serving the Lord. Are we making them for going to the grocery store, the hardware store, to our friends' houses, to family get-togethers, to cookouts? Are we making, and some of you are, right? And I can respect that. I truly can. But I don't want people to think that I'll just shove the Lord off to the side, right? Oh, it's too dangerous for me to go to church. However, this other stuff that I want to do, I can do, right? Listen, that will put you in danger. Trust me. So I just want to caution against that. And that's part of what we're talking about. And honestly, the division that this has caused in our churches, we need to try to figure out what the truth is and what's actually going on. That way, if nothing else, we can talk about it and say, listen, whatever your emotions are, whatever your feelings are, that's one thing. But this is the truth of the matter. These are the numbers. This is what's happening. This is what has happened. This is what's being reported. This is what's not being reported. And talk about that openly to hopefully put to rest some fears and anxieties and worries. But also, it's best to know the battle that you're fighting, right? Being as this seems to be something that is shredding the church right now, I don't mean the church as Crossroads Church. I mean the church is in blood-bought, born-again people of God. This is shredding them right now. It's tearing them apart. You see them fighting on Facebook over it, right? I will not wear my mask. Well, you don't love people because you won't wear your mask. Well, you don't love freedom because you do wear you're not trusting in God. You are trusting it. You're being stupid, right? All of this stuff. And guys, I'm going to be honest with you. Folks see that on Facebook. And if you're acting like the rest of the world, then why in tarnation would anybody want to come to the Lord? But anyhow, we'll try to get back on subject. COVID-19. So let's here's my plan for tonight, right? Here's what I'm going to try to do. And I'm going to tell you this, that way you can check me on it if I mess it up. My plan is to go down through and try to ask some questions. And then we'll try to answer those questions. And we will answer them with a couple of different ways. We will answer them with the widely accepted narrative and with an alternative theory. And then I'm just going to let you decide as a people what it is that you want to believe, understanding that you need to take your emotions out of it. And you need to take your fear, your aggravation, your frustration out of it. You need to take all that away and just try to look at what's really going on. Broad picture, big picture, little picture. Look at the trees, look at the whole forest, zoom in, zoom out, and try to figure out what's going on. Then at the end of it, after we try to answer a few of these questions, we will kind of talk about what we do from here. And how we progress forward and what we do moving forward, and try to answer some of those questions. So here it is, right? I titled this "How to Shed Some Light on COVID-19" because I wasn't sure how to title it as we were going through here. So where did it come from? Let's go to clear to the basics, right? Where did this come from? So the widely accepted narrative is that it came from a source in Wuhan, China area. We were originally told it was coming from bats, possibly bats being sold in some sort of market, open air market, and that at the beginning we were told that it could not go from human to human, that it was just going from bat to human. We found out that was false. And hey, you know what? I get it. We all make mistakes. Things happen. It is what it is. Lord knows I have made plenty of mistakes, and I've had to stand up and apologize to the church. So I'm not going to downgrade anybody for making a mistake. But obviously it can go from human to human. Now, the study shows that most studies show that more than likely it did not go straight from bat to human. That's a very limited chance, a very limited opportunity for it to do that, because the virus from bat to human, it won't transmit to humans because of the way that it's set up. So the only way that it could have went from bat to human is that it went through some sort of intermediate animal, some sort of other domesticated critter, and that critter come into contact with a human or multiple humans and infected them. Now, in order for that to occur, it would have had to be in a bat and then somehow transmit to some other animal, and that other animal would have had to transmit it to another human during its contagious period. Now, while in that intermediate animal, it would have had to morph into such a way that it could then go to humans during the contagious time of that intermediate animal. Does that make sense? So it would have had to go from bat to, pick one, kitty cat, and then while in kitty cat, morph into something that can be delivered to humans. And then while it morphed, it would have had to come into contact with a human while said kitty cat was contagious, right? And so that is about the large consensus is that's probably the way that it transmitted, probably not straight from bat to human, but from bat to intermediate critter, domesticated critter to human. And started in the Wuhan area. That's pretty widely accepted among all narratives, and spread from there. So here is a alternative theory, right? There were studies going on in the United States on viruses that were trying to make them go to a gain of function. What's that mean? It means that they were changing viruses around in labs to make them go from animal to human. Right? So animals carry all kinds of viruses. Humans carry all kinds of viruses. A big majority of the ones animals carry can't go to human. There's some that eventually can. And so these labs in the United States, that's what they were doing, was they were studying how to make viruses gain a function, meaning they could be transmitted to human and then from human to human. Well, in 2014, the NIH and the U.S. government, the NIH being part of the U.S. government, stopped funding these studies because they realized that, hey, this is a really dangerous idea. This is kind of like playing with dynamite. We probably shouldn't do that, right? And then the NIH lifted these bans in 2017, and they started funding EcoHealth Alliance, which was funding a lab in Wuhan, China, that was started somewhere around that time frame. And they were researching coronavirus in bats, and they were getting bats from a cave very close to them, and they were taking this virus and giving it gain of function, somehow going in and changing the structure in it where it could then be transmitted into humans. And so this lab was doing that. The Trump administration pulled the funding that the NIH was sending to this lab via this EcoHealth Alliance. And so the fact that they pulled the funding means that they were sending the funding. So do you understand what I just said? They were funding, our government was funding a lab in China that was taking these bats from caves close to them in Wuhan, and they were changing the structure of the virus that the bats were carrying so that it could be transmitted to humans, all in an effort to build a vaccine, a so-called vaccine for this virus. That was what they were trying to do on paperwork. That's what it will say, right? And so what was going on, right? They were doing that. And so after taking these bats and trying to give this virus this gain of function where it could go to humans and transfer to humans to make this vaccine, they either accidentally let this thing leak out of the lab or intentionally sent it out of the lab. And that is your alternative theory. So now I'm going to ask you, what to you makes the most sense to you? What seems the most obvious to you? What sort of thing takes the... So, right, I don't believe in evolution. I don't believe that our planet started from a whole bunch of nothing and it blowed up, and then it turned into a bunch of rocks that were floating through the air, and they began to be attracted to one another through gravity, and they began to spin at a high rate, and all of that somehow by chance ended up with us here, right? I don't believe that, and part of the reason I don't believe that is because the likelihood of that is nothing, right? Like that's not possible. And so also the main reason I don't believe that's because I trust that our Creator created this earth and created us to worship Him on this earth. And so I look at this and I say, okay, so did a virus go from bat to intermediate animal? From intermediate animal, it morphed and then went to human, and then human got sick and spread a pandemic worldwide. Or did it come out of this lab, right, that was creating this virus to go from bat to human? They were giving it the gain of function. It didn't have to travel through some other animal. That seems to make the most sense to me. However, what do you think? What do you think makes the most sense? And then you have to ask yourself, if it did come out of the lab, was it intentionally or was it accidentally, right? Those are the questions that you have to ask yourself. What makes the most sense to you, and the accidentally or intentionally may get cleared up as we go through the rest of this But it's something that you have to think about. What makes the most sense to you? Take your emotions out of it. Take your pride out of it. Take whatever you think about our government or the administration that's currently in the government or the administrations that were in the government or what you think the United States has ever stood for or China has ever stood for. Take all of that out for a minute and just ask yourself, what makes the most sense here? All right, so then we were told that there was this virus in Wuhan, China, and it was spreading like wildfire, right? People dropping like flies. We all remember the videos. Everyone knows that China supposedly is not very good at reporting trouble in their country. And so everyone's like, hey, it's probably a lot worse than what they're saying. And so how does this thing spread? Oop, I just committed COVID crime. I scratched my nose. Sorry, guys. But it itched. My nose itched. I'm sorry. Don't throw me in COVID jail. How does it spread? The narrative is it spreads from human to human, from respiratory droplets, from coughing, sneezing, or talking. That is why everyone has to wear a mask, sick or not, right? And of course, sick or not is a play on our asymptomatic spread, right? So can asymptomatic people who don't show any sign that they are sick whatsoever, they don't have a runny nose, they don't have coughing, they don't have fever, they don't have body aches, they can taste everything just fine, right? No issues whatsoever. They feel healthy as they ever have, but yet test positive for COVID-19. That's what I mean by asymptomatic. And therefore, if you can be that way, and it can be spread by coughing, sneezing, or talking, right, then everybody has to put on a mask. Everyone, whether you're sick or not. So obviously, if you're truly asymptomatic, you're not going to be sneezing and coughing as much. You may still get a tickle in your throat. You may get some sort of allergy in your nose. You may sneeze. You may just put too much pepper on your biscuits and gravy and make you sneeze, right? So you got to put on a mask. Although you're not going to wear a mask when you're eating biscuits and gravy, so that's probably a terrible example. But the idea that you may be spreading this thing, whether you're asymptomatic or not, has been fought against. Some even doctors within the WHO organization fought against this, and they were immediately torn apart. However, Dr. Fauci fought against that very hard, right? No, absolutely asymptomatic people are spreading this, according to Dr. Fauci. So then we have, and then the other argument is, well, there's not really that many asymptomatic people, right? There's people that have very mild symptoms. You may just have a little bit of a runny nose, and the next person may end up on a ventilator, and so you don't know what traits you may or may not have to make you that way, or what they may or may not have, or you don't want to give grandpa or grandma the COVID, and if you got a runny nose, you're going to give them the COVID, right? And so you got to wear a mask, and that's the kind of the narrative, right? So you guys remember kind of the old school or work protocol whenever you were sick, right? You had to be at least 24 hours without a fever, and then you could come back. This does not apply to COVID-19. Everybody is considered sick until proven otherwise, right? Even if you have no symptoms at all, which seems like a very dangerous virus. Also, we have to consider whether or not that makes sense to us, right? Can you be sick with this and not know that you have it at all? I'm talking no nothing, no runny nose, no coughing, no sneezing, no fever, no loss of taste, no loss of smell, all of those things. That's the reason why everyone has to mask up. However, the problem with saying that it is spreading by saliva, by mucus in our respiratory systems and all of that is I personally know some families that have had COVID, positive cases, and they were symptomatic. However, they did not, none of the rest of the household got sick, right? They had kids, they had husbands, they had wives, and they did not get sick. And so I doubt that they were wearing a mask in their house. I doubt that they were staying 6 feet away from one another during their time. They probably could have even had it for 4 or 5 days before they knew they had it, yet people in their own household didn't get sick. So does it make sense to you? Are you being lied to? Does it make sense that everybody or that anyone and everybody could possibly have this? That's the reason why anybody and everybody needs to wear a face mask, because it may be spreading even if you don't think that you have it, even though you don't have a fever, coughing, sneezing, hacking, none of that stuff. However, you need to wear a mask. Even Dr. Fauci himself, who has been the leader of this thing over the last several months, called the face mask symbolic as a statement for showing that you care for others more than stopping the virus, because he knows and they know that the virus itself can't be stopped by the face mask, and furthermore shown by the fact that they say you can put anything over your face, right? A bandana, right, you may say, listen, they want you to wear a face mask. They didn't know it would be effective before. Now they say it will be effective, and so you can use anything you want. Listen, we have always had bandanas. We have always had cloth and the ability to make masks, right? Well, we didn't want to have a shortage on masks at the beginning. Well, if you tell me I can wear a bandana across my face and it still works, I've always had them, right? I've always had shirts we could have made. If this thing was so deadly that a spit drop can make everybody around you sick, up to 15 people, according to some of the reports, then why not tell me that I need to start wearing that way before now, right? If you knew that. And why do I have to have a Q-tip shoved halfway to my brains because the virus in my spit is going to make everybody around me sick? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves. Are they telling us the truth? Are they truly just learning as this thing goes? Or are they attempting to control the masses? And so let's look at the numbers. What are the numbers? So we need to remember that the numbers we are talking about on a very large scale. We are talking about a planet that has a world population of somewhere around 7.8 billion people, right? So I live in small town USA. So if I get on here and I talk about 4,000 or 5,000 people, that sounds like a lot to me. That sounds like way too many, right? But we're talking about this in relative to 7.8 billion people. Billion with a B, as in Billy Bob, right? That's what we're talking about here. 7.8 billion people. So we need to remember that as we talk about these numbers. So the narrative is that 15 million people have had COVID-19, right? So figure out your percentages on that. Way less than 1% of the population, way less than 0.01% of the population has had this. And of that, way less than 1%, the narrative is about 4% have died, 56% or so have recovered, 60 still sick, or at least not considered recovered or dead, 60%. And so 15 million people is a lot of people. That's a whole lot of people. But when you're relaying that back to 7.8 billion people, that number shrinks drastically, right? So here's the alternative theory. Do these numbers add up? Do they make sense? So what can we know about the numbers and whether or not they add up? Because obviously I can't go and just count every test kit that's ever been sent out and figure out who's positive or who's negative. So we look and see if there's been any falsehoods found in the numbering. That's the only way to know if it's been true or not, right? And so they are counting not just people that die from COVID-19. They're also counting people that die from other things and test and possibly test or are probable for COVID-19. This could inflate the numbers. We all know the motorcycle wreck dude, right? The guy was in a motorcycle wreck, tested positive for COVID-19. Did he sneeze and wreck his bike, or did a car pull out in front of him? We also know that people, if they are symptomatic and they test positive for COVID-19, but they die from something else, that can also be considered a COVID-19 death. So, say they have a heart attack and they test them and they say, they got COVID-19. They can go back and say, well, actually, COVID-19 is what killed them. That's what made them have the heart attack. But they had 50 stents in their heart and bound to have a heart attack and die anyway. But COVID-19 was the culprit. And then we go on to look and see if their tests are accurate, right? So whether they're counting people that die from COVID-19 and they're making it, whether they die from it or something else, and they're calling it COVID-19, even if they test, let's say everybody that dies and tests positive for COVID-19, we count them as COVID-19 death. That's fine. Let's use their symptoms. Okay. Is their test accurate? So if you look it up, the FDA has been working with certain factories to limit their false positive cases because they've had so many. Some labs in Florida stating 100% positive case testing. That is not possible, right? That every single thing that you possibly test, every person that you possibly test has been positive for COVID-19. 19. So it goes on to say, so it's fair to say, anyhow, that we have a large number of false positives. So once again, we are talking percentages of a big, big, big number. So let's just say there's been 300 million people tested, right? In a world of 7.8 billion, 300 million doesn't sound like a whole lot. And let's say the rate of false positives is somewhere around 3%. You're talking about 9 million people, right, that have been tested positive falsely. Therefore, you may have a virus that you may not know that you have. You may be fearful that you have this virus, and then you may go get tested for this virus, and it may come back positive, but you still don't know whether or not you have this virus. That is the possible alternative theory. And so you decide, right? Is this incredibly infectious virus that is almost certainly going to kill anybody that has any sort of pre-existing condition if they get it? Is that the case or not? Are this many people actually getting COVID-19? Or are the numbers being inflated on purpose? We also know many of the states have accepted the CDC guidelines to state that they should count probable cases and confirmed cases, and the states aren't defining between the two. So what's a probable case mean? A probable case could be that you come into contact with somebody that had COVID-19 and you have allergies, right? You haven't been tested positive for COVID-19. You don't know whether or not you have COVID-19, but you could be considered a probable case because you have a runny nose and you've been in contact with somebody. So it seems as if at the very minimum there is a large-scale attack or a large-scale delusion going on to inflate these numbers falsely, both the numbers of cases and the numbers of deaths, to bolster them, right, to make sure that they are extremely high. Or are we just being extremely, extremely protective, right? Those are basically your two options. Are we being extremely cautious and just, throwing this thing at everything so everybody knows how serious it is, right? Maybe they died of COVID, maybe they didn't. Let's say they did die of COVID. That way people understand that, hey, this is very bad. So let's just go ahead and put that on there. Or is this being inflated for an alternative purpose? Are we telling people that millions upon millions upon millions of people are testing positive, even if they don't know they have it, and that's truly the case, or are these false positives coming back? And it's being done that way on purpose? Or is that just over caution and the fact that you can't make anything work 100% of the time? Is that what we're talking about here? We'll let you decide. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I have my thoughts that I'm sure you understand, but you decide. Is this something that was an accident, or is this just a pure thing that happened and it's being taken advantage of now, or is it a deliberate attack? So the narrative is it's a very dangerous time and everybody is doing what they can to help the situation, all the way to the point that everyone needs to wear a mask and give up their way of life, how they make money and how they operate in this life, not go to church, not be around one another, skip family functions, and all of that, all in the name of loving your neighbor, making sure that they don't get sick. That is the narrative. Here is the alternative theory, that this is a deliberate attack on the world to gain control over the people of the world, to get them to do what they want. If we understand that this thing was created and released in Wuhan, China, by a lab that was funded at least in part by the NIH and Dr. Fauci, who's in charge of the NIH, this is a cold and flu-like virus that affects the lungs in some, and we think that the numbers are being falsely bolstered, both in cases and in deaths, then we have to ask ourselves why. Well, we know that Bill Gates and the NIH worked together in 2018 to discuss a flu vaccine that would be universal to everybody, to make sure that everybody gets it. We know that there are many people that don't agree with the flu vaccine. And so how do you do this, right? How do you get everybody to take a vaccine that you want them to take? You create fear in the world population. You create fear up on a scale that there has never been before of a virus. That way everybody is willing to take it. I want you to, if you get time, look up Gavi and look up ID 2020 and UN Agenda 2030, and you tell me whether or not this virus happens to be extremely handy for all of those things. These are not conspiracy theories. It's their websites. Look them up. I don't have to give you any sort of wow factor. Go look them up yourselves, and then you tell me what you think. There are many people that go against this flu vaccine, and so we have to create another vaccine that people will want. Now, remember that the Wuhan lab's whole point was to create a vaccine for this coronavirus. Before it got released, before it could go from bat to human, and then human to human. That was their whole point of business, and it just so happened that a virus come out of them, and it just so happens that these people like Fauci, like Bill Gates, are all saying that we can't go back, and now many of the world's leaders are saying we can't go back to things as they were. You can never shake hands again. You probably can't touch your mouth like I'm doing. Again, you can never do any of these things again until there is a vaccine. Isn't that handy? And so, how quickly will we line up to take things like this? Well, if we think about our mask policy, we have not fought it. We haven't went against it. We have put it on over and over again. We've given up our freedoms. We shut down our businesses. We shut down our churches. We shut down our lives for something that they lied about to us every single step of the way. The church has been hindered all the way to the point that some states were even having parking lot service. Some churches were having parking lot services, and in states like Kansas, it was made illegal to do. In fact, the New York, I can't remember if it was the mayor or the governor. I'd have to go back and look it up. He said that it was not God and it was not our prayers that slowed the spread, but it was you people doing what we tell you to do, right? We did this, not God, not your prayers, but the people. And so, knowing that these worldwide foundations and government officials are saying that you can't go back to normal life until there is a vaccine for something that affects literally less than 1% of the population, and on their inflated numbers, less than 4% of the population of the less than 4% of the less than 1% of the inflated numbers die from this thing, then we need to ask ourselves, what is actually going on here? Is this a lie to promote fear? That way we can some reason we would get this vaccine. Why would you want everybody to have a universal flu vaccine? I'm sure many of you have got the flu. It will kill you if you are old or you have all sorts of pre-existing conditions, or you're very young. And we all know that. Yet some of you still refuse to get the flu shot. And most of these people, if you really ask them, you decided not to get the flu shot, they would just say that's natural selection at work, right? And so what is the deal here? Why are we trying to, why does there seem to be all of this promoting of false numbers, numbers that seem like they are being skewed to make them bigger? Why is that occurring? Well, if you're a Christian, the only reasonable explanation that you can come up with is we are working our way very quickly into the eventual rule of a leader that we all know as the Antichrist, right? That's the only thing that will make sense to you as you go forward trying to figure this out. And so we have to ask ourselves then, right, what are we going to believe? Are we going to believe that this is a virus that came from the area of Wuhan, from some sort of market there, whatever, and it went from some bat to some domesticated animal, and from domesticated animal to human, and then from human to human? Or are we going to believe that it came out of the lab, right, that was trying to do the very thing that the coronavirus is doing now? They're trying to develop a vaccine for people so that if this ever did go from bats to humans, they would have a vaccine prepared for it. Even though most, especially non-American scientists, were saying it's very, 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 very less than 1% chance that it could have went from bats to humans. Yet somehow it has. And so are we going to believe that the lab created this thing and either sent it out purposefully or accidentally? Which one of those two are you going to believe? What makes the most sense to you? What seems to be the most probable? Or are you going to believe that it created naturally, right, in bats outside of or in and around Wuhan, and it just spread from there, right? Are we going to believe that it is only transmitted by spit from your mouth and from your mucous membranes, however, some way, somehow? I know that whenever this was first spreading across the United States anyway, there were very few counties in Missouri that had positive cases, and some of the counties that were positive weren't around one another, and they would list them, hey, they haven't been around anybody that's had COVID-19, nor have they been in close contact or drove through an area that has had COVID-19, right? They were just like, whatever, outside mowing the grass and got sick the next few days. So we have to ask ourselves, are we believing that, right? Did it really spread by spit, right, coming out of our mouths? Is that how it really spread, or did it spread by other means, right? How many people actually, because listen, like I will tell you all day long, I believe that there's a virus going on that people's getting sick from, right? And there's some people dying from it, and it's terrible. But is it what they're telling us it is? You'll have to decide that. What makes the most sense to you? And what makes the most sense to you? Are they trying to, did this thing, even if it did come out of the lab, did it just slip out? Was it just an accident? Or was it something that was done on purpose and just being taken advantage of now? Or was it an actual mechanism sent out there in order to prepare everybody to take this universal vaccine supported by Fauci and Bill Gates and the Bill Gates Foundation and Gavi and ID 2020 and the Rockefeller Foundation? And you say, well, you're sounding crazy. Okay, well, go look up who's supporting Gavi, who's the financial supporters of Gavi. Go look up who it is that's pushing for everybody to have vaccines. Go and look and see who's pushing to make sure everybody has an ID. Go and look a digital ID at that they can operate in the world economic system. Go and look all that stuff up for yourself. Don't just trust me. Go look it up for yourself. And then, so what are we looking at now? What do we do? COVID-19's here. Even if we don't know where it come from, and we don't know how it got here, and we don't know what the purpose is and what the cause is, what do we do, right? Because it's here. Well, the response from the church, biblically speaking, this is what Jesus tells us. Jesus tells that coronavirus, I'm just kidding. Jesus didn't say nothing about coronavirus. All right. So Jesus said, fear not, for these things must come to pass, when he's talking about what the world will be like before he comes back. He tells them about all these famines. He tells them about pestilences, which is sicknesses. He tells us about all that stuff. And he says, fear not, for these things must come to pass. When you see these things, know that your redemption draws nigh. So do we get to just quit and give up? No. What do? We armor up and fight, not with guns or swords, but with the gospel. We spread freedom relentlessly, the freedom of the gospel relentlessly, right? So the Bible says where the Spirit of God is, there is liberty. We spread that liberty relentlessly without stopping, because we understand that our hope is not in this life. Our hope is in the life to come. That's what we're truly trusting in, that the Lord has saved us. He will help us in this life, but ultimately that we will have a heavenly home when this thing is over with. We continue laying hands on people and praying for them. Like the Bible says, we decide to serve God rather than man, right? Well, no matter where COVID come from, no matter what it is, the Bible says to lay hands on the sick and pray for them that they might be healed. That's what we're supposed to do. That's our job as the people of Christ, right? There is no way around that, no matter where it comes from or what it is. That's our job. That's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to forsake the assembling of ourselves, as the manner of some is. As we need to continue to press forward. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt that as these times come, the persecution of the church will get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And the Bible says time and time and time again to endure through this thing, to fight through this thing, to not give up, to hold on to the faith, to continue spreading the gospel. There's no way around that, no matter whether you think everything I said in the last 48 minutes, and that's a lie, because I've only been talking since the 10-minute mark. The last 38 minutes and 45 seconds, if you think every bit of that's a lie, it doesn't really matter now, right? Because we have to press on. We have to press on for the things of God, no matter what. So that being said, if you decide, or if you go through these things and you realize that, hey, this thing may be not what we're being told on everything out there, right? There may be some discrepancies in the numbers, and there may be some discrepancies about where this came from. There may be some discrepancies on how to treat it and all of these things, right? Why are they calling for a vaccine for something that affects literally less than 1% of the world's population on their inflated numbers? Why aren't they allowing some of the other things that they know is beneficial, people that end up getting this, some of the things that they know works to help them get better? Why are they fighting against that and saying, no, 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 you have to have a vaccine? Well, quite honestly, once again, if you're a Christian, we have to look at this and say, well, this must be the groundwork being laid for the mark of the beast and the beast system, right? There's no way around that. And so if we go through all of this, we have to figure out. And once again, you decide, right? Is this a virus found in an intermediate animal and spread to folks through Wuhan? Or is this and being made human to human, that the animal is contagious whenever they come across the person, that it could go from human to human, and it morphed while it was in that intermediate animal. So whenever it went to the human, it could then go from that human to the next human. Was it that, or was this thing actually sent out? Is it something much more sinister than what it seems to be and what you're being told on TV? Because let's be honest, if we were working on gain of function here in the United States and we shut it down and then we started funding as a government a lab in Wuhan, China, that ended up producing this, that would look very, very bad on the United States, right? So we have every reason to cover this up to the very best of our ability. Us and China and everybody that's involved has every reason possible to want to cover this up. And so, which one has the least amount of holes? Let me ask you this. What does the Bible say would happen before the Lord comes back? Because it's our authority, right? Does the Bible teach of famines before the Lord comes back? Does the Bible teach of pestilence and of sickness? Does the Bible teach of corrupt leaders? Does the Bible teach of some sort of worldwide leader that will make everyone take a mark to operate in society? Does the Bible say that the gospel will be spread all around the world before the abomination of desolation will occur? Does the Bible say that they will promise peace, peace, and sudden destruction will come? Does the Bible say that the people of God will be even more persecuted as we get closer to Jesus coming back? How much are you willing to ignore before you, in order to be accepted by the world? How much of this are you going to ignore? How much of this are you going to continue? Listen, now's the point where you're going to get Justin's opinion, and you can like it, you can not like it, you can be mad at me, you can say whatever you want to say. But at this point, how much are you going to ignore? How much are you going to continue to stick your head in the sand and pretend like it's not happening? How much more are you going to continue to do that before in order to be accepted by the world, right? How much more are you going to continue to say, no, I'm just going to believe what they're telling me on the news. I'm going to believe everything that they say on TV. I'm going to believe everything that I read on the internet. I'm going to believe every ounce of that in order to not look crazy to the rest of the world. Let me tell you something, child of God. You already look crazy to the rest of the world. You believe in this thing called God that created this whole planet. You don't believe that it was an evolutionary chain. You don't believe that it just happened on some sort of Big Bang theory. You don't believe that we're all just here from monkeys. You don't believe any of that. They already think you're crazy for trusting in some guy that we call Jesus. They already think that you're crazy for believing in heaven and hell. They already think you're crazy for believing that Jesus can heal you. They already think that you are absolutely insane to consider the idea that somebody died for your sins and resurrected and came back to life. They think you are already clinically insane and ought to be thrown in jail. So how much longer are you going to allow yourself to say, you know what, I would rather believe the things that the Bible is telling me, or that the people are saying on the TV, instead of the things that the Bible tells me? That way I can be accepted by the world. How much longer are you going to do that? Is it getting you anywhere? Is it doing you any good? Are you happier for it? Let me tell you something. Keep fighting against God. Keep fighting against that down in your heart that's rolling, that you say, wait a minute, some of this isn't adding up. Some of this doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why, but I don't like this. Quit fighting against that and pray and ask God, what is going on here, and what do I need to be warning people about? Why is it that the church is being so persecuted over a virus? Why is it that they can't meet in parking lots and stay 6 feet away from one another in cars in some of these states? Why is it that a governor or a mayor, whatever he is in New York City, said, hey, it wasn't God that did this, it wasn't prayers that kept the spread from happening? It was us. We stopped it. How much longer are you going to do that? How much